Hello and welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Fantasasta. This is Battlefield 1. In today's weapon review, we'll be taking a close look at the RSC 1917 Optical, one of the new weapons for the medic class in the They Shall Not Pass DLC, which has, of course, just launched. Now, this weapon has some interesting traits, and we're going to be covering them in today's video, as well as, of course, when to use this weapon, how it performs on the battlefield, and how it compares to some of the other medic weapons out there. Now, before we get into all that goodness, let's quickly touch on the unlock requirements, how you're going to acquire this weapon, of course, assuming that you do have the DLC. You're going to have to perform 75 heals, and I should note that both of these requirements are post-patch, post-DLC. If you've done this before the DLC came out, it will sadly not count. So you're going to need 75 heals, as well as in a single round, 15 kills with the outloading 8.35 factory. One of the more challenging but rewarding weapons to use in Battlefield 1. Both of these requirements should be relatively easy to meet, and you shouldn't have a trouble unlocking this weapon. Having then talked about how you unlock it, once you have it, how good is it really? Well, starting off with the stats, then we've got a maximum damage here of 53, a minimum damage of 38, a 2-shot kill in close quarter, 3-shot kill at long range. To be precise, you're going to be killing your targets with 2 shots to the body all the way out to 47 meters. From 48 meters and onwards, you're then going to require 3 bullets. Now, to account or to somewhat balance for this very high damage model, of course, we've got a low fire rate, 163 rounds per minute. I believe it's actually the lowest fire rate in the medic class. Now, the low fire rate comes paired with a decent muzzle velocity of 720 meters per second and a very small magazine at 6. However, given this damage output, actually it's plenty, and you shouldn't find yourself struggling with this one magazine to take out at least 1, if not 2, and if you're very good, of course, 3 targets. Moving on then from the magazine time to how long it takes it to reload. Reload times aren't too speedy, but they're not too bad either. 2.7 seconds for the short reload and 3.3 seconds for the long reload. Obviously, it's worth going for the short reload. However, the long reload isn't going to kill you either. The recoil on the weapon is relatively hefty at 1.8 vertical and 1.1 horizontal. That's both to the left and to the right, and of course the usual first shot recoil multiplier of 1, essentially no first shot recoil. You're gonna have to account for the recoil, but given that this weapon isn't to be used at extreme long ranges, it shouldn't get into the way of the performance too much. Now, the accuracy of this weapon is actually relatively good. That is to say, with its base ADS at 0.135, its moving ADS at 0.765, and its hipfire while standing and moving obviously not that great at 3. You can actually relatively comfortably fire this weapon both standing still and maybe even moving, in the case of moving only from medium range and close quarters, as long as you're aiming down sight. So using this weapon at long range is viable. You just have a longer time to kill than some of the competition, as we will talk in just a moment. Having then covered the stats, how does the weapon perform? Where does it perform best? Well, this is one of the true medium range rifles in the game. To say the least, it specializes in medium range combat. It's capable at close quarter and actually has a very good time to kill if you hit your first shots. That's to say, you hit both of your first 2 shots and don't miss one. However, given its extremely low fire rate and its low magazine size, it's not something to be used in close quarter for a reactionary purpose. Now, what I mean by reactionary is you run around the corner and you notice there's an enemy. You want to always be engaging targets with this gun that you know are there, you know are around the corner. You want to be starting the firefight, you want to be starting the engagements. You don't want to be reacting to your opponent's fire, in that case being reactionary, because you simply don't have the damage output for close quarter to do so. At medium range, the story is very different. Still doing a 2-shot kill, you can put out some massive damage and surprise some people if you've got an accurate shot with just how quickly you'll take them down. This gun is extremely powerful at medium ranges and not to be underestimated. It's a great support medic weapon. What I mean by that, it's the person that stays a little bit back, only a few meters behind the front line, and picks off the flanks coming in left and right from a covered position. This is how you play this gun most effectively, and while you may not necessarily see that in my gameplay today, because I myself am still getting adjusted to the weapon, this is, in my opinion at least, how I and you will most likely play this weapon most effectively. Now, regarding its strengths and weaknesses, other than its damage model, it's also a flexible weapon. Now, we've already talked about close quarter and medium range. We've said it's alright in close quarter, very good in the right hands, but it's very difficult to make it work unless you're a very good player. Great at medium range. What about long range then? Well, at long range, it's not the strongest weapon out there. You need a 3-shot kill and you're firing at 163 rounds per minute. If you compare this to something like the Mondragon Sniper, which at 257 rounds per minute, of course, fires a lot faster. faster and still only requires 3 bullets. Furthermore, you also don't have the scope, the magnification for this. Sadly, this is the optical version of the weapon. There is no sniper version of the weapon, which means you've got this weird kind of red dot sight type optic, which I, in my opinion, find is the greatest limitation to my accuracy with the weapon, because the accuracy of the weapon itself is actually very good. And I look forward to actually unlocking the factory version and trying out whether or not the iron sight version of this weapon isn't a bit easier to use at longer medium ranges because of the better accuracy of the iron sight. We'll have to wait and see regarding that, but the weapon nevertheless can be used at long ranges. It's just not the strongest. So you have a relatively nice bell curve shaped strength model for this weapon. It's alright in close quarters, it's alright at long range, it's extremely good at medium range, and if you're an extremely accurate shot, you can also make this weapon very powerful in close quarter. Having then talked a little bit about the competition, as well as where this weapon performs best and how to best use it, as I've already said, in a semi-secondary, a supportive medic role just behind the front line. I'd like to clarify here, this is not 50 to 60 meters away. You truly want to remain within 47 meters of your target to fully maximize the potential of this weapon to get that 2-shot kill and remain as effective as you possibly can be. Now, with that being said, would I recommend you try out this weapon if you have the DLC? Is it worth unlocking? Most definitely. The weapon is unique, it feels interesting, it's a breath of fresh air, but not only that, it's also a very competent weapon. It's worth unlocking, worth using on a regular basis, independent of game mode and of course playstyle. But with all that being said, I'd like to hear from you guys. Have you already unlocked this weapon? How have you found it? Is it a good weapon, a bad weapon? Have you been enjoying it? Have you found the unlock requirements as easy as I have to get through, or have you struggled a little bit trying to get the 8.35 factory to work for you? Leave all that down below in the comments, with of course your usual video suggestions for future videos for Battlefield 1. But with all that being said, I'd like to thank you very much for watching and hope to see you in the next Battlefield 1 video.